Hey everybody, Pete A. Turner, executive producer and host of your Break It Down show. Hopefully you all are digging the new Trubify intros that we're doing. For sure, if you're a musician or a comedian or someone who does lives a lot, you're going to want to talk to me about Trubify. Make sure you do that. I definitely work with these guys. I support them because what they do works and it's getting better every day. So Trubify, check it out. Hit me up at pete@breakitdownshow.com. All right, enough about that plug-in stuff. Let's talk about our guest today. You're going to love this. You know that thing called The Onion? Maybe you've seen Babylon Bee headlines. They kind of do the same kind of thing, satirical news, right? Well, the guy that started The Onion is his name's Scott Dikkers. By the way, hat tip to Brett for hooking us up. Scott is a brilliant comedian. He has these 3 different books on how to write funny. You definitely should check those out. Look in the show notes, Amazon, click on that link. That will help support us and also support Scott. This guy's hilarious. Look, The Onion and how they write their satirical headlines and how they just step over the line of reality and absurdity and really poke fun at us, the system, politics, whatever it's going to be. You know, we love stuff like that. We get into a long, rangy conversation. You know how I do it. And we talk from Irma Bombeck all the way over to Donald Trump. And we cover everything in between. And here's what you're going to find out. And this is not anybody familiar with the show. It's not going to surprise you. Scott and I don't agree on a lot of things. It's fine. We can have a conversation that's smart, that is collaborative, and we can talk. But the thing is more often than not, we're agreeing on things. Could things be better? Yes. Are things as bad as everybody wants them to be? Probably not. And so we look at all these different elements and aspects, and you just hear Scott being real, being true. And I'm going to tell you, you're going to like the guy. You're just going to like him. You may not agree politically, but that doesn't matter. And maybe you do agree politically. He's a big Bernie supporter, just so you know, going in. I think you're going to love who he is, how he approaches life, and how he sees it. And when you look, you're like, yeah, I can understand why you feel this way, why you would like these things to be better. So I think you guys will enjoy this show. I know I did. I just edited it, and I thought, man, this is a quality show. I'm really proud of it. We didn't avoid politics, but we did it in a way that allows us all to, just reasonable and rational. And I think that we've all got time for that, especially in this time when everybody's trying to not be reasonable and rational. All right, enough about that stuff. Listen, one of the best ways you can support the show is, of course, going to Amazon. If you're going to join Audible, which I definitely recommend you do, let me know. I'll send you a link. I'll put it in the show notes, whatever you guys need. If you go to Amazon, you're going to buy something, by all means, let me know. I will send you our show link, and that will help us out. It's just a little bit of something, but it's something. Also, I'm going to do another round of shirts. My old shirts are all wearing out, so it's time for me to get some new ones. You'll see that soon. And the other thing is we're getting ready to close out. I think there's like 100 tickets left for the Save the Brave rifle. It's a $5,000 retail price rifle. You can win it in the raffle and allow us to raise some money for Save the Brave. You know how we love that. Ride for the Brave happened back in July, and we're just now finishing up the raising fundraising for the rifle made by the folks over at Blackstone Arms in Dallas, Texas. All right, one more thing to say to you. You know what I'm going to say now? Here comes Scott Dikkers.
Lions Rock Productions.
This is Jay
This
Moore.
is Greg Proops.
This is Jordan Harbinger.
This is Dexter from The Offspring.
This is Nathan
This is
East.
Sebastian Younger.
This is Rick Morata.
This is Stuart Copeland.
This is Mick Gillette.
This is Andy Summers.
Hey, this is Skunk Baxter.
This is Gabby Reese.
This is Rob Bell.
Hey, this is John Leon Guerrero.
Hey, and this is Pete A. Turner.
Hey, this is Scott Dikkers, and you're watching The Break It Down Show.
Oh, man, this is great, man. First off, I like to say this, but it's important that folks who've done something incredible hear it more often because you just don't get to hear it enough. From all of us out here in humanity, thank you. Thank you for what you've done for the last 30 years,
Thank you for saying that, Pete. It's very nice of you.
So for those that you don't know, and I guess it's possible that they don't, you founded The Onion and have written satirical commentary-based just entertainment for years. You've written movies, you've written books, you've directed movies, just all kinds of things. You're very, I guess a modern form of Mark Twain, I guess would be fair to say.
That's very, very high praise indeed. I've always been obsessed with doing comedy, and I'm always doing some kind of comedy or other, and worked with a lot of incredible people over the years, done a lot of various things, different people, done a couple of things on my own. And I look back and I marvel myself at how did I do all that stuff? I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah. So, and there's a lot of information that you've covered about the basics. So I'm going to do my best to not cover any of that stuff because there's just so
I
many
appreciate
great
that.
podcasts with you out there. By the way, your podcast is awesome as well. I really enjoyed
Oh, thank
that.
you. Thank you.
Did people like Irma Bombeck inspire you when you, because like we're basically the same age, a couple years difference, that's it. But
Probably,
did people
yeah.
like her inspire your comedy, or how did you get this voice, this satirical voice?
Irma Bombeck absolutely inspired me. My mother used to love her and read from her, but she didn't inspire me in exactly the way that you would think. So I think of her writing as in the conversational style. I break down in my book, How to Write Funny, I break down the spectrum of humor writing. And conversational is kind of in the middle. It's not satirical. It's not even formulaic. And it's not like kid stuff, which is the least sophisticated category. It's in the middle. And Dave Barry is another person who uses that style. And I was never a big fan of it. And even as a young kid, I knew that it wasn't very sophisticated. It was very on the nose, which is something that, you know, professional comedy writers and script writers always try to avoid. You always want to create some sort of facade for the audience because it's a lot more fun. And so what inspires me typically is work that I think I could do better. Like it's work, and I'm not saying Irma Bombeck is bad. I'm just saying it never really made me laugh, like gut laugh. I appreciated it, but I could see how much better writing could be. Same with like Mad Magazine, National Lampoon. And I was too young for the Lampoon's golden age. So I saw it when it was on the wane. And I see that and I'm like, well, I could do something like that. Like I feel like I'm capable of that. When I see work that's just astoundingly good, that kind of like depresses me. And it's like, why bother? Like that person's already out there doing amazing work. I could never touch that. Spy Magazine made me think that. When The Onion first started, they were amazing. And they came about a few years before The Onion. And they were the big national humor publication when The Onion was starting out. And every month we'd get the new Spy, and just, you know, our hearts would sink because we knew that The Onion was never going to be as good as Spy. So those sort of things kind of stopped me dead in my tracks. But bad comedy, that lights a fire under me.
Yeah, that's a funny way to approach it.
Yeah, no, it's just the way I am. I don't know why. It's weird.
The other thing I wanted to ask you about too is movies like Raising Arizona had to have hit you in a way that made sense to you, because a lot of people, back when the Coen brothers were just starting out, they were as young as The Onion was, you know, you didn't quite get them because they are a little quirky, they are a little satirical, and yeah. I know that they had to have had some kind of touch on what you created.
Absolutely. That movie had a big impact on me. It came out the year I graduated from high school, and they grew up in St. Louis Park, Minnesota, where my dad lived, and I spent a lot of time there as a youngster. I never met them. They're a few years older than I am, but I loved that movie. It was so unique and so fresh and so different. Like that was the thing about it. Like, yeah. You know, for me, the one essential ingredient in all comedy is surprise. And so when you're doing something that's a cliche, or you're doing something that's in the same format as something we've seen before, you're going to have to work really hard to make it funny. But when you're doing something completely out of the box, when you're breaking the mold, like it was a throwback to like the Preston Sturges movies, you know, of the 40s. It was something that it was like a reinvention of that for the modern age. And it was so energetic and crazy. John Goodman is amazing. William Forsythe is just, oh my God. He's like, I've loved that actor ever since that movie. And obviously Nicolas Cage. And why am I spacing on her name?
You can do it. You can do
it. Who played Ed? She was in Broadcast News. She was in The Incredibles. I'm
Keep
totally
going.
Spacing. You know who I'm talking about.
I can't do it either.
You can't do it either. Area Man's Tongue.
Yeah.
No, name of.
Oh, man, I can't do it. I was hoping that by you going through the
name of that actress on the tip of Area Man's tongue.
Well, I will find the name while we're sitting here talking.
Yeah, just Google it so we don't go crazy. That is contagious when you can't think of a name.
Totally pull her name up normally, and you're right. She
Normally,
played Ed,
it's right there.
you know? It's
Yeah.
so funny. The other thing I wanted to ask is how does your Midwestern sensibility, and along with the Coen brothers, and I'm assuming that Irma Bombeck probably had some kind of Midwestern roots too, just because
I'm
she
guessing.
seems that way. But is
Totally.
that something that I'm putting on you that's not fair?
No, I think when I compare myself to a lot of the humor writers or comedy people who come out of the coasts, a lot of them have really different upbringings. They're moneyed, they're kind of provincial. I didn't have any of that. Like, my grandma lived in a trailer park, and we were on food stamps, and I had to work summer jobs to help out. So that puts you in a position of wanting to tear down established authority. So I think it makes you a better satirist in general, because tearing down establishment, authority, things about society that are kind of entrenched and accepted as the norm, you grow up having resentment against that, and it festers really deep. So that's going to come out.
And Brett Allen, by the way, hat tip to Brett Allen for hooking us up. It's a great lift. He did it. Holly Hunter was the name.
Holly Hunter.
Yeah. And this will not surprise you. Irma Bombeck was raised in Dayton, Ohio. I mean, it's right on the money.
No, that doesn't surprise me at all.
Yeah, yeah. When you look at how things are today, and it's a satirical goldmine, because whether or not you like President Trump, one, he definitely has a humorous bent to him, but he does stuff that just feeds comedy, whether you hate him or love him. And then the left, as they counter him, are equally ridiculous. And you need a lot of ridiculousness to be able to really, hit home runs, I think, in the satirical field. Are you able to not write something every day about what's in the news and the headlines, or are you just over it after all these years?
No, I want to do it more. So I'm one of those people who, like, people come to me all the time and say, how can you do satire now? Everything's so absurd. I'm one of those people who has always seen plenty of absurdity in this world. There's stupidity everywhere because people are generally pretty stupid. So you're going to see stupidity on the right. You're going to see it on the left. You're going to see it among rich people and poor people, black people and white people. So I don't work at the Onion anymore, and I don't write satire every day. I do have a humor website called blaffo.com where I put stuff, and other people write stuff that I would have put in the Onion had I still worked there, and I just didn't have a place for it. So I was like, all right, I'm making this and putting it up. But lately, I've had so many thoughts about what's going on that they couldn't be contained simply in headlines and fake news articles. So I started crafting a novel, and it really just kind of bubbled up like a spring, and I pumped it out in about 24 days, and I just finished it yesterday. So that's kind of where my comedy energy has gone in recent weeks.
What has happened recently that just makes you smack yourself in the head? I mean, there's so many crazy, ridiculous things. Like, for example, when there's literally a story that says mail-in ballots create a problem because we have all these things, and then the left says, it doesn't handle that, and then the right, God bless the right. You know what? I'm going to stop.
No, I'll answer you. So it's essentially the theme of my book, and that is my book is kind of a love letter to mankind's greatest achievement, which I believe is science. And it's an admonishment of mankind's greatest weakness, which I believe is religion. And they are in contrast. And the theme of the book is being able to tell the difference between fantasy and reality. Science tells us what's real, and fantasy is fun, but we shouldn't believe it. And there are people in this world now, and this is the thing that drives me crazy, is to answer your question, who reject doctors, they reject science, and they won't wear a mask. And so they show up at a big rally and they get sick and they die. And They believe lies. They have no criteria by which to judge what is true. And that's unbelievable to me. Absolutely unbelievable. But we're raised with that because we're raised with religion, which teaches you to believe things that aren't true, to believe fairy tales and fantasies. And it's harmed us so much throughout history. And I think we would have been fine without it, but we can't help it because we're human. We have an innate need for religion. It's the only way that we can explain the world around us. I read this amazing book a while back called Religion Explained by Pascal Boyer that just totally blew my mind. And I walk around with a lot of his ideas in my head all the time, like hyperactive agent detection, which is just a beautiful theory of evolutionary psychology. But those sorts of things get me thinking. And, I'm one of those annoying sort of holier than thou people who just goes around every day thinking people are stupid. But I feel like I'm also really good at seeing my own stupidity and the stupidity in humanity in general. So I can write about that in a way that doesn't put me on a pedestal and make me feel like I'm better than anyone else,
Yeah, that's a great thing. And I want to come back to that. But first, I want to ask about, so we've had a lot of scientists come on. Let me back up even further and say this. I was ruminating on this today as I was getting ready to talk to you and trying to think of some of the satirical ideas, because you and I have I'm not putting myself on your level in terms of success and everything, but I like to take phrases and turn them like the way you describe satire, how it, like it impacts the comfortable and makes comfortable the impacted or whatever. But
yeah, right.
In terms of facts, right? Here's a fact, and there's just no way out of this box. Science says that tomato is a fruit. Policy or politics says, because the Supreme Court has found on this, that it's a vegetable. And these things can't exist in the same factual world, and yet.
Well, to be more precise about it, I believe the Reagan administration declared ketchup a vegetable.
No, it was earlier than that. There was a Supreme Court decision. Yeah, and it was based upon imports, and how they dealt with it.
Yeah.
And so
to me, that's just a matter of semantics. I don't care what they call a fruit and what they call a vegetable. All I know is tomatoes are delicious.
Yes, they are delicious. but it is like it does reveal like how politics can like warp reality and make us do things that don't make sense. And also,
language can warp it as well.
Well, that's true.
Semantics.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
We also have this perception that there are single solutions to extremely complex problems. Like for the most part in the U.S., and in many nations around the world, the big problems are solved for the most part, but the harder problems that are multivariate and challenging, they don't respond as well to, I know how to fix this. If you're so talented, let's get it done. So and this happens to all of them, but that sense of, I know what to do. And that's why we hire them. They say they know what they're going to do and we believe them. But they lose something along the way because all these other things get saddled to the legislative ideas. And so we get these preposterous outcomes where we had to make a deal and this thing slides in.
Compromises. That water everything down to nothing. Yeah.
Yeah. Are comedians good politicians if we gave them a chance? Or would you all be terrible at this?
Yeah, there was a comedian who ran for mayor somewhere recently, and I can't remember. I don't think it was in America. I think it was somewhere else. Maybe somebody knows that and can send that in. But I believe they are, because especially comedians who do satire, because satirists care. Like, they care about making the world a better place.
Okay.
Most politicians obviously want it for the power, so they're in it for the totally wrong reason. They get there and they just become totally corrupted by the money. And the last thing they would do is something to help the people. Like, are you aware of that Princeton University study they did recently where they compared public opinion polls about what people want
No.
versus what Congress fights for and achieves in terms of law? It turns out, so shockingly, that Congress is totally at the service of rich corporations, and they'll do whatever they want. The rich corporations get 100% of what they want. The people get average 50-50 chance of getting what they want. In the last 50 or 60 years, the line has gone like this. They're just bought and paid for, our politicians. So yeah, I feel like a comedian can kind of see through that. Like I love the political work Jon Stewart is doing right now, fighting for the 9/11 Victims Fund. I mean, the emergency workers, and the movie he just made about money in politics I thought was great. And I love some of the things that John Oliver is doing, where he's calling his audience to action about really, obvious things that people just aren't informed, because the media is just laughably out of touch with anything that's really important.
They are not in the informing business.
They're in the entertainment. They're in the infotainment.
Yes.
I'd get rid of info. They're just in the entertainment business. And they're also foot servants of our corporate masters, because that's where they get their advertising. They can't piss them off. So, all these news anchors are millionaires. Like, you don't see anybody on major network or cable news who isn't a millionaire. All the pundits, all the hosts. So they're not going to be on there talking about what's good for regular people. They're going to be talking about what's good for them and what's good for their corporate masters. Because as soon as they say something against the corporate masters, they're gone. It happens all the time.
Yeah. And again, everyone does it. As someone who's got a degree in mass comm and whatever the hell that means, when I watch like a White House press briefing, it doesn't matter who's sitting in the office as president, I'm embarrassed by how bad they are at asking questions. It's always these entertainment-focused questions, looking to look
drudge up the drama.
Yeah. Like, I'm a spy. Totally. I know all about asking questions. And when you ask a closed question, you're seeking to control the conversation. That's not your job as a journalist. It's just not.
Yeah.
I'm going to calm down for a second. Get all lathered up. Okay, so you've written your book. I want to hear more about that, because that's new.
Yeah, so I just finished this book. I sent it out to my team of beta readers, and I'm going to be getting notes back tomorrow. Going to make some final tweaks to it and send it off to my agent. It's called The Joke at the End of the World, and it's about a 12-year-old boy from the 1950s who ends up experiencing the apocalypse in the year 2020. It's, like I said, it's a satirical, Vonnegut-esque journey with a lot of twists and turns that, like I said, it was the only way I could think of to encapsulate all the things that I've been thinking about with all the craziness going around. The state of politics, the state of media, climate change. Oh yeah, coronavirus.
Yes.
All the stuff, wrapped up into one. We've been living in the apocalypse for the past 30 years, and our leaders have known it, and they don't do anything about it. The book doesn't really touch on that, but it touches on the absurdity of us being in that position right now.
Yeah. Yes, it does. The absurdity is going on right now. You remember when we cared about immigration? And when we cared about the climate, even, I mean, just even any of these things, it's just.
I don't know that we ever cared. Well, I think back in the 70s, caring about the environment was a bipartisan issue.
Yeah.
And after Reagan, that was kind of the turning point. The right decided, we don't care about the environment. We care more about business, and they should be able to dump any chemical they want.
Yes.
And now Democrats have moved there too. So now they believe that corporations should dump any kind of chemical they want. And there's this fringe element on the far left, AOC, Bernie, et cetera, who are like, we should not be dumping chemicals in the environment. And everybody's laughing at them like they're crazy. That's where we're at.
Yeah.
That's where we're at. And if we had just listened to Jimmy Carter, we wouldn't be in this situation at all. We would have moved away from fossil fuels, and we would have been using renewable energy, and we would have had a lot more time.
It's funny that Jimmy Carter has improved as a president, since the 40 plus years since he's been president.
Well, he was not a good president in terms of his leadership. He was quite bumbling, but his heart was in the right place, no question. And he was smart. He was a nuclear scientist.
Has that been true of any president since then?
Heart in the right place? No, absolutely not. Absolutely not. Everybody since then has been a stooge for corporations, in my opinion. I'm getting really radical here.
That's all right. Hey,
I don't mind. I'm a radical. I've always been a radical. It's that my opinions have gotten more radical as the pendulum of the world has drifted in this other direction. In the 70s, I was a normal person.
yeah. I mean, look, we all get more cynical as we get older.
Yeah.
Does cynicism impact your view of the world in a way that isn't useful to your art?
No, cynicism is totally useful to my art. It's not very helpful in my personal life, so I try to keep a cap on it.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I want to be, I want to be happy and I want to have a good life. And so if I go around thinking everybody's awful and the world is awful and we're doomed, then that's no fun.
I'm always struck by how often people, and I mean people as a society, how often we forget things. Like I'm sure you recall this when we first or last rebranded Aunt Jemima to be less offensive.
She's been slowly evolving over the decades.
And so is Mr. Peanut. I mean, like brands always evolve and everything, but
sure,
the
Coca-Cola logo has gone through the same very slow evolution.
Yeah. But we seem to
Campbell's
forget that.
Well, humans aren't built to.
Hey, this is Pete A. Turner from Lions Rock Productions. We create podcasts around here. And if you, your brand, or your company want to figure out how to do a podcast, just talk to me. I'll give you the advice on the right gear, the best plan, and show you how to take a podcast that makes sense for you, that's sustainable, that's scalable, and fun. Hit me up at pete@breakitdownshow.com. Let me help. I want to hear about it.
Well, humans aren't built to think of things long term. They're not built to think of long distances, long spans of time.
Mm-hmm.
We're built to react to emergencies.
Yeah.
And that's very satisfying to deal with an emergency. And so a slow issue like climate change is something that, the whole world is literally in denial of that right now. We're in the first stage of grief. So by the time we reach the fifth stage, acceptance can be way too late.
Yeah. It also strikes me as funny as a guy that remembers things. I recall when George the Younger, President Obama, and Donald Trump have all said, "I am the greatest president for the environment since Teddy Roosevelt." They always put Teddy Roosevelt out there because they've done X more than anybody else has done, whether it's secure land or, create legislation, whatever it is. They all say that. And yet here we are,
Yeah. I wish we had another Teddy Roosevelt. That would be amazing. Remember, isn't that funny to remember back when? Could we take
it though? Could we take today?
Yeah. Well, we need him.
Okay.
But isn't it funny to think that progressives in that day were Republicans?
Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah.
How the pendulum has swung.
Yeah. How about he also was, he busted up corporations and
big trusts. Yeah.
And those
he was a radical leftist by anyone's measure today.
Yeah, for sure. But exasperating to the establishment.
It was like the whole idea of the bully pulpit was to go out there and fight for people against the powerful. And that has fallen so far out of vogue.
I love the quote. It's not a exact quote, but I'll paraphrase the quote. That damned cowboy is the president of the United States. Like as soon as McKinley died, like someone loses their mind.
Love it. Yeah, love it.
One of the other things that's funny, if you have any kind of memory, is that President Trump did not invent in lying by a president, and also did not invent enriching oneself as the president. This is almost a universal value now.
He definitely takes it to a new level.
Oh, sure.
I'll give him that.
Yeah.
But The Onion did a funny front page recently that was all presidents from Washington through Obama. This is when Obama was president, may have lied. And it was a picture of all the presidents in a box. Yeah, because I want to be, I want to be happy and I want to have a good life. And so if I go around thinking everybody's off.
And I want to make sure I give a shout out, not to be competitive or anything, but the Babylon Bee writes just the best stuff. Like
they're doing good work. Yeah, it's hard to do Christian comedy. It's hard to do right-wing comedy, honestly, because of the whole thing you mentioned about afflicting the afflicted and comforting the comfortable.
Yeah.
But they are doing top-notch work. I hand it to them.
They manage. I wouldn't want to compare like who does it, better. Better, but they manage to get just half a step over to the absurd and away from reality.
Yeah.
And you and I both know, and both The Onion and Babylon Bee are going to, over the next 5 years, have actual headlines that become reality. I mean,
yeah, happens all the time.
Yeah. Life is absolutely imitating fiction. It's just,
yes, it is.
It's ridiculous.
That used to be my favorite thing when Onion headlines would come true later. There's just nothing more satisfying, because in comedy, you always operate under the assumption, under the truth, the fact that anything you create, anything you write or concoct in your head to be funny is never going to be as funny as real life, because real life has the best humor. You just can't compete with it when real things happen. So when you write something and then it does happen in real life and it's funny, it's like that's kind of the gold standard, the holy grail of comedy writing.
There's one of the things I like to try to do is get some of these, I'll call them villains, on the show, so I can humanize them a little bit, understand them. Some dramatic villains that we have in the zeitgeist are Nazis, Hillary Clinton. Like, nothing in reality of what's thought about her is what she actually is. She's become this mega uber bad guys. Any of the prime senators, whether it's Senate majority leaders or the minority, all of those folks are made into such. It's the WWE with the characterization of, Harry Reid or Chuck Schumer or any of these guys, right? Like, they're all just preposterous in how we see them.
Yeah.
Does that in any way benefit us, or is it good for the soul because we can look at him and make jokes? Mitch McConnell. I mean, how can you not look at that guy and think anything other than what a fucking asshole? It's.
Yeah. He's so brazen about his devotion to his donors. Like, it's just brazen. And it mystifies me that people vote for that. I just don't get it. But Hillary Clinton is no different. She's just a foot servant for the establishment. And, I think way deep down in her black little heart, there's room for, helping children, which she once did as a young woman. Those things are so long gone. And once people get to a certain level of power, I think it's just hard for them to connect back, So you see people like her, Nancy Pelosi. What is Nancy Pelosi's net worth? It's like $400 million.
Yeah, nothing.
Like, that's just like, how does a person like that even, and the fact that she calls herself the resistance and she does these play resistance things like ripping up Trump's speech, but meanwhile her house like votes for everything Trump wants. Like, I don't understand it. It's the Democrats and the Republicans are the same, and they're not on our side. So I think it's fine that we make them out to be villains. Of course, they're human beings.
Yeah.
But they're human beings who live in such a twisted context that regular people like us could never hope to understand what that's like and how that warps your brain to have that much money and that much power. Like, that's corrupting. There's no two ways about it. We know that.
Is there anybody you're confident in voting for president? Like, any of the candidates at all?
Yeah, I was a Bernie guy, and I wanted Bernie to win. I don't think he fights hard enough, and I don't think he's a good charismatic leader. But for me, he was right on every policy. He was Teddy Roosevelt. He believed essentially in the same stuff, and in Theodore Roosevelt. I'm sorry, in Franklin Delano Roosevelt. So those are two of our greatest presidents. We've totally forgotten why they were great and what they did. And the fringe minority that was against them at the time is now the majority. So, the establishment beat Bernie for the second election in a row. It was sad to see.
Yeah.
So, yeah. And if AOC ever runs for president, I'm 1,000% on board. I love her.
Is Bernie too old? Biden too, Trump too, but is he too old and too
No, he
rich?
has his wit. He has his wits.
Okay.
He's the poorest member of Congress. He's about as rich as my dad. He has like $1 million in retirement. He's a normal person.
Okay.
Yeah. AOC is a normal person. She was a bartender 4 years ago.
Yeah.
And I like that. That. That's what makes them sensible. Trump has been eating with a gold spoon his entire life. He doesn't have any connection with regular people.
And yet he takes on all of these orphan causes, like closing the loop between federal and Native American jurisdictions to get all these kids that are getting scooped up. He's written a lot of EOs for veterans. Like, he takes on these things. You're like, I can't reconcile like his passion for solving these little problems or whatever it is, if it's passion or whatever, but it's not pandering. Like if it's like helping human trafficking be reduced, so how do we reconcile these things? Because we tend to take the scale with President Trump and just bam, put it all on the side of negative and there's no chance for positive, but he does do things where you're like, I like to post them like, here's a win. And then no, we can't have a win. All the comments after that, but there are things, how do we reconcile this?
Well, anytime he does something that I agree with, and I think is good, like I give him credit for that. Like, great, okay, wonderful, he did the right thing. He usually does it for the wrong reasons, but that's fine. Let him I'll take the win. But for me, it's a matter of just recognizing that every human being is a bungle of contradictions. That's just who we are. That's what we are. So nobody's all good and all bad. You can go out there and say, well, Martin Luther King was a great leader and he's awesome. And someone will say, yeah, but he raped a bunch of women. Yeah. And then you can talk about Trump, well, he's a horrible human being who just lies all the time. He's a rich asshole. And then somebody will say, yeah, but he did criminal justice reform or whatever. Right. So that's just how it is.
Yeah.
Thomas Jefferson, you go back, you name anybody, there's going to be good and bad. And now in the cancel culture, we're trying to completely flush people down the toilet for doing something bad. And I'm against that. I think, and if, to each his own, if you can't listen to a Bill Cosby record anymore, don't listen to a Bill Cosby record. That's fine. Yeah. But don't take him away from me because I grew up on his comedy. I love it. And I will acknowledge that he's a terrible human being who did unspeakable things and he should be in prison for that. But I love his comedy and I love his albums and he's a master who deserves to be studied for that.
If you're going to cancel somebody, you should be able to speak intelligently about the pluses and minuses. You're right. I mean, I can do this with Bill Cosby for a while. I mean, look at the way he blazed trails and established, pathways, clear pathways, not only for blacks to be in front of the camera, but behind the camera.
Absolutely.
Normalized life in the hood through Fat Albert. And that kind of, like he did all of these things. Wonderful. And
he humanized black people for a lot of white people who didn't know any black people.
Right.
He did so much for civil rights and the Black Power movement in the 70s. He was at the cusp of that. There's no question about it.
Yeah. And even like, obviously the Cosbys was enormously important to the country.
Huge.
But also the show after that, which I can't think of the name of it, that had
Bill
nothing.
Cosby, I think it was.
No. The one remember. With the college kids when they all go to Spelman. Or
it was
A Different World.
On it. Yeah, A Different World. Thank you. Yeah.
And it truly was a different world. That is not, like at the same time, you probably had the kids from Save the Bell going through college as well, and or within a year or two of each other. And those are different worlds completely to see black kids living in a black, college and doing all these things. Pitch that show, to the corporate execs, and only Bill Cosby could do that 30 years ago.
It's true.
And another thing in Bill Cosby's defense, and of course we don't defend rape and drugging of women, but he also took black entertainers and said, this is how you manage your money. And one of the greatest success stories is Ray Parker Jr. because he laid it out. He's like, this much for investment, this much for taxes, this much for spending.
I didn't know he did that. That's great.
And he did that for all kinds of people, because again, they wouldn't know it necessarily coming from where they came from.
Yeah, they came from generational poverty, a lot of black people. So Chris Rock does a great routine on that where he talks about the difference between being rich and being wealthy. That's a wonderful bit. Yeah. That a lot of black people who get new money, they blow it all on a boat.
Yeah, we all new money across the board.
The same thing. Yeah. Anybody gets new money, they're going to be in trouble.
Yeah, it's if you cancel Bill Cosby, you don't see the value in that, and I definitely see the value in that. Of course, you don't want to approve, the exploitation of women in any way, but yeah, you can't just cancel that. And when I go to D.C. and I sit or stand at the Jefferson Memorial and I read his words, and then you put slavery on the scale with it, it is a motherfucker to deal with, mentally. You really have to. And then the thing I want to add to this, and then I'll throw it over to you, is how am I doing the same thing today? Like, where am I incongruent in my
Exactly. Well, I'll give you one area that I touch on in my novel, because I think we can look back on that day and say, how did those people reconcile all their talk of freedom while they have slaves? And I think from all the writings, we know that Jefferson was tortured internally about that, but it was too radical in his day to come out and say that. So what today, the equivalent is that we all still have slaves, but they're overseas and we don't see them. And we have a middleman who are all the corporations who employ them. And we enjoy the cell phone batteries that they make and so forth. And we're happy with that. We're okay with that. And I hope there's some future day when we look back and say, oh my God, just the way we look back on slavery in the South in America and are horrified by how people could have lived with that. Because children are working till they drop in factories overseas for very little money. And we're benefiting from that every day.
Not to mention all of the extraction of minerals,
mining, doing all the mining, absolutely.
And I mean the garbage mining too, where they're burning rubber off of wire and extracting, the chemicals. And
right,
we're not doing that.
Poisoning people.
Yeah, exactly.
No. But we'll happily go to some country where they don't regulate that and nab that stuff, no problem.
Well, I don't want to pay more than $1,000 for my iPhone now. Come on.
Exactly. You don't want to pay what something's worth. Like that's exactly what the Southern slaveholders argued.
Yeah.
They were like, well, we're making good money. Like, you can't expect me to pay them a living wage. Like, I wouldn't make any money.
Yeah.
Same exact argument.
Wait,
but to us now, we haven't learned a thing.
Yeah.
Because to us, we'll say, well, I'm not going to pay $56 for a gallon of gas. That's absurd.
Yeah.
But what's the cost of that gallon of gas? Well, we're destroying the entire world. That's the cost.
Yeah.
And it's worth a lot more than $3.50.
And to be fair to the South, if you sent bales of cotton north that were 3x the cost of the other guy's bale of cotton,
they wouldn't have bought it.
They wouldn't have bought it. And they would have said, find a way to drive the price down. Oh, okay.
Absolutely.
So
the guy with all the slaves is gonna succeed while everyone else fails.
Yeah.
So that's one of the problems of capitalism, no question about it.
Given our current environment politically, could we even solve a problem? Could we pass an amendment and get it through? Or are we just as guilty?
No, impossible. Yeah. Impossible. An opinion like that would be absurdly radical at this point.
And I would submit too that folks like Jefferson or Washington, they were willing to and recognize the evil of slavery and were prepared to release, the slaves upon their death. But I would imagine that it was politically too dangerous. The country's just starting, it's like to make that radical step to say, I'm freeing all of them.
Yep.
It wasn't possible to do because they had to look after their own livelihood and the nation may not have survived it. We only barely got 13 together to agree. And that involves some real trickery,
It's true.
Yeah.
It's absolutely true. So we're in the same boat. Nothing has changed.
Nothing has changed. Solving different problems, but still the same. These are Grecian problems too, and Sumerian problems. Nothing has changed with that.
Yeah, they're human problems. And we have created so many of these problems by virtue of the fact that we evolved the way we did. Like we have certain failings that are inherent to us.
Yeah.
And we're always going to have them. Like maybe under the right circumstances in 2 million years, we'll evolve different characteristics, but I don't think we're going to be here that long. And in the meantime, happy to make fun of those foibles with my satire.
Yes. Well, you get to play with the pendulum no matter where it is, and I don't know that it ever rests in the middle, but it definitely
almost never. Yeah.
Yeah. When I think about, like the political pendulum, whatever, the balance that we create, there's a problem with the basic nature of our country, and is that we are as diverse as any, and we self-select our diversity. People come here from all over the place, which is wonderful, except for diversity and unity are basically antonyms. And so we look at places that are not diverse and they're able to move in one common direction because they have a lot more unity than we do.
Yeah, I thought about that a lot, and I like the phrase "divided we stand." I was thinking of that during 9/11.
Yeah.
Because like so many people are different and they come from different backgrounds. They have different beliefs and opinions, but that doesn't mean that we can't find a common cause. But humans aren't built that way.
Mm-mm.
We're just not. We're very tribal. And even if we can intellectually see that we have a common cause, our deepest emotions are going to want to fight with the other tribe. And so we're always going to be justifying that behavior.
My experience overseas, talking to locals in non-permissive, dangerous places, informs me that all people have some common values. One of them is that everybody hates cancer. Everybody wants something better for their kids, and everybody's just trying to get through the day. They're trying to survive. Would you add?
Where did you go?
What's that? Oh, I've been to Afghanistan, Iraq, and I went off the camp all the time and interacted with the locals. So I got to see, what normal is for them. And then I would deliver that normalcy back to the U.S., we'll say. And then vice versa. I would take what the U.S. had and was trying to do and try to deliver that in a way that the locals could understand it. And that was sort of my form of spying. It doesn't sound very sexy. I found out about bombs and stuff, but the really important work was that communication of trans reality.
Sure. That sounds fascinating.
Yeah, it was fascinating. But so would you add any universal values to that? Like we all hate cancer. What can we add just globally? I mean, obviously we can't agree on climate change.
Universal values. One of the ones that I see is that this is going to sound so corny, but it's totally true. We love each other. Like, we're social creatures. And the only difference between some people and other people who hate more versus people who love more, is the radius of who they consider their people.
Mm.
So what this world needs is we need to expand that radius to include the entire world. We need to think of ourselves as one race of people, human beings, because problems like climate change, problems like, God forbid, an asteroid starts hurtling to the Earth. Like, how are we gonna stop that?
No, it's not.
I give us no chance of working together to solve that problem based on how we've dealt with climate change. So, like, those are the real challenges, and all the other challenges disappear as soon as you start to think of us as one people. You don't have wars anymore. You don't have immigration problems anymore. You don't have poverty anymore. And it's just a matter of expanding our sphere of who we consider to be our people, our tribe. And that's just an intellectual switch that people can turn.
Mm.
And I don't know why people can't do it. I guess I was just raised to be a total bleeding heart liberal by my parents, and to see all human beings as, they were Christian, they were liberal Christians. So they were in the American Baptist Church.
Mm-hmm.
And they taught that Jesus said, love your neighbor as yourself, and your neighbor equals any other person. Be kind to strangers.
Mm-hmm.
Pray for those who hurt you. Just the whole thing. All of those sappy liberal messages of Jesus that we have conveniently shuffled under the rug. And we're never going to get there, because we just don't have the will, I don't think, as a people.
When we were kids, we were really working on, as a society here in the U.S., the elimination of color from our decision set. Like, it doesn't matter what color you are, and that's sort of the libertarian in me. I don't care what orientation you are, how you define your gender. I just care that you're a good person. You're trying to pull your own weight. And if you're able to pull your own weight, you're helping somebody else who can't get there, just like in general, contribute to your society. But we seem to be and I know the pendulum will swing back, but we seem to be really ready to dismiss people, to not collaborate. I hear a lot of people, because I talk to everybody, I talk to folks on the right, the left, in the middle, and too many folks want it to be everything red or everything blue, when really we need a balance in all of these things to get somewhere.
The real dichotomy is not between red and blue. It's not between right and left
Mm-hmm.
in this country and in this world. The real dichotomy is between the rich and powerful and everyone else. And the rich and powerful make up a tiny percentage of the world's population. Everyone else is 99% of the world's population. and they generally agree on a lot of things. But the rich and powerful are rich and they're powerful. So they can prop up entire structures and entire governments and entire countries to further their aims, to make it look like it's an even 50-50 balance. They can propagandize and convince gullible people that what they want and what's good for them is also good for those people. So I think a lot of people have been duped by that. And that unfortunately, that's the situation that we're in.
When we talk about the 1%, I always encourage people to scope the camera back and look at where the 1% really is. And, you know, it's truly all of us here in the U.S., as we were talking about earlier.
We are, the U.S. among the world's population are in the 1%, no question.
Yeah. I mean, my example is always we poop into potable water, you know?
Yeah.
And then flush it, and then don't give that waste another thought, unless it backs up. And then all of a sudden we call a plumber because that waste needs to go somewhere else. That is the epitome of decadence and luxury, you know, throughout the world.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I want to respond to what you were saying about like seeing a colorless world, because it's funny. When I grew up, my grandmother had that opinion, and my parents had a different opinion. My parents' opinion was that we're not ready for a colorless world because that ignores the context that, for example, in this country, Black people live in. Right. They are dealing with generational poverty. They're dealing with the fact that for some of them, only 2 generations earlier, they were slaves. So those people have a harder time. Oh my God, listen to me, those people. Poor people with generational poverty, people in dire circumstances have to work harder. And when there's prejudice against them in the larger culture, they have to work harder. So I like that we're in what I like to think of as a post there is no color world, where we are all now learning that context, and that context is important because we aren't equal. Some people have more privilege than other people, and we have to accept that and work within that context. But yeah, ideally, one day we're in a world where human beings are in the same context, and we kind of treat everybody the same and give everybody the same opportunity. I just don't think we're capable of that based on our history at this point.
Is America a good place?
Well, I think we're incredibly lucky to be living in this place, given all the places that we could be living now or in the past. So it's good for us. It gives us tremendous privilege. I think it could be doing a lot more good in the world. It could be a lot more of a leader on things that really matter. But I'm not a patriot. I don't think in terms of patriotism. I think it's a childish, silly thing to think that like, rah, my country. I've never been one of those people. All I care is the policy good? Is it helping people? And are we moving forward as a species? And I think we could be doing a lot better. Like, you know, that dichotomy, like the love it or leave it versus I love it, that's why I want to fix it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And then are we getting better? I mean, when you look back 40 years, 80 years,
I think
100
in
years.
some ways we're getting better.
Okay.
And in other ways we're getting worse. That's probably how it's always going to be, you know?
Yeah. And everything's a balance here, right? Like we always have to balance, you know, we want businesses to succeed so that people do get wealthy and that they invest back into the community, whether it's through jobs or, you know, I mean, look at the Getty for crying out loud. That museum is incredible. The government couldn't do that. And if they did, it would suck. It would be shitty, you know?
That we do need the pendulum to swing back though, so that the disparity is not so insane at this point. Like you got to give the rest of the people a little bit of a leg up. It's just swung way too far.
Yeah.
In the direction of the wealthy and away from, like, I feel like in the last 100 years, there are more social services, more of a social safety net, which people appreciate and like. We need more of that. And I know that's not a very popular political opinion, but it's what we need. Like those things are good.
I struggle with the isolationist in me fighting with the hawk in me who tries to eat the dove in me. You know, like I've got this triple problem, and I'll use Syria as an example. You know, because just 24 months ago or so, you know, there was human atrocities going on there. Do the same thing, China, all over the world. We can find these things, and we hate seeing babies getting blown up on TV. We hate it. And we want to act like we care about it, but we don't actually act like we care about it. You know, I struggle with these things. Like, is it our business to be in the Civil War? You know, we tend to make those things worse. And, you know, lately, what are your thoughts? Like, how do we wrestle with the hawk dove isolationist aspects of our own personal lives?
Yeah, well, another incredibly unpopular political opinion that I have is that we need to be moving toward one world government. I liked the idea of the League of Nations. I like the idea of the UN. It doesn't work because too many people don't take it seriously. They don't recognize its power. But if the UN was powerful, things like Syria wouldn't happen. You know, there wouldn't be as much agony and torture and destitution in other countries as there is if we, again, because the UN, the idea of the UN is thinking of the entire human race as one tribe. And that's where we need to go. I don't like nationalism at all. I think it's really stupid. What's the point? Like, literally, what's the point of that?
Yeah.
All it does is, if you want to maintain your privilege, makes a lot of sense. But that's not my goal. My goal is to make sure that no one is so unprivileged that they have to resort to the horrors that we see in the world.
When you realize that Raqqa and Rome are separated by 1,000 miles, and so is Chicago and Denver,
it's crazy. That's crazy.
It's crazy to know that that's what, you know, poverty. And look, you just go another couple 100 miles further. Don't even go all the way to San Francisco, and you're in Asia Minor, where the world's a completely different place.
Yeah.
So can we find a world where, and that's also like, okay, we're looking at Wilson, League of Nations. And then again, the scale on that guy is like, God, look at the bad side of Wilson. And it's just,
yeah, he's practically a Klansman.
Yeah.
You know,
it's insane. So how do we get to these things? Because just yesterday we were talking about caring for the ocean, and the ocean is part of a global system because you have, you know, the terra, the water, and then the atmosphere. And managing that and getting resources to that, you know, China has to manage its exploding middle class, has to provision them with things. And that includes air conditioning and cars and fish. And there's just not enough resources to continue. India, same thing on a slightly smaller scale, but still way bigger than us. How do we manage these things globally? How do we look at, you know, emerging nations and say, no, you don't get to have all the stuff that we have?
Yeah, that's tough. Obviously, that's really tough. If we had taken Wilson's proposal seriously, we wouldn't have been in this situation. Obviously, we can't go back in time, but so many of these depleted resources are a result of the last 100 years. And that was the right time to start thinking about world government. It's too late now because the ocean is dying. Tuna is going to go extinct. And we're going to be in trouble when the ocean dies. We don't care about the ocean right now. We don't care that it's acidifying. Doesn't affect us, we don't think. But wait till the polar ice caps melt, and then a lot of people are going to care. So, yeah. There's you know, I hate to be a doomer about it, but we're doomed.
Well, it's certainly a possible outcome that we're not doing much about. There are a lot of businesses and universities working on solving these problems at the micro level, and we need all of that to happen to hopefully have a couple of big ones.
If I was a scientist and if that was my calling, I'd be working tirelessly just to try to come up with some sort of technological solution to some of this stuff.
Yeah,
it feels very daunting. I can't remember the name of the essay. It's a great essay. I'm not going to remember the title. Maybe you will, or maybe someone watching will send it in. But it was an essay in which an alien race had photographed the Earth starting from when it was formed to the present. And it was such a long movie. They played it in fast speed and they made it last 1 year.
Yeah.
So for the first few months, it was just molten lava sloshing around. And for the months after that, it was like terraforming happening.
Yeah.
Human beings showed up half an hour before midnight, December 31st.
Right.
And then in the next few minutes and seconds, the entire topsoil of the earth was destroyed. More species than ever in the history of the planet went extinct. And the population exploded. And when you look at it on that time scale, you realize what a literal ticking time bomb we are. It makes you really pity those poor scientists. And again, I would be doing that if I had any mind for mathematics and science and I had gone into that instead of comedy. Because what else can you do? You've got to try. Yeah. But it's throwing 1 ounce bags of sand off the Titanic.
Yeah, I mean, it's a lot to be said about looking at it like that. And as we try to chase these solutions in the ocean and everything else, and we have had a bunch of these people on the show, and it's remarkable. Finless Foods is trying to figure out how to print fish in a warehouse, and that would alleviate our need to fish, and then quickly the ocean would recover in terms of in that one little aspect of the species that are endangered.
Yeah,
but also. Yeah, it's just these problems are damning,
They're huge.
We're also working on being able to live indefinitely, and we're knocking on the door of 130, 150, 300 years.
Yeah, well, that strikes me as counterproductive at this point.
Yeah. And if you've read Gulliver's Travels, you go to the last segment, the last travel, when he goes to that world where the immortals are.
With the horses?
I don't know, it's the one where they have like the dots on their heads and they get to be 500 years old and they slowly lose their minds.
His very last world, I think. Yeah.
And, we think about the big and the little, but you forget the rest of the book where it's like, you don't really want to live forever. You want to have your time, do your work, and then get out,
Yeah. He really lets go and gives you a piece of his mind by the end of that book.
Hey, one last question. Who cracks you up today right now? Who just makes you laugh and you just love it?
I like Wanda Sykes. I like Bill Burr. And I like Chris Rock. And those are the current ones. There's a lot of like classic stuff that I like. But those are the people working now who I think are at the top of the game, and they make me laugh. They're all stand-ups. Isn't that interesting?
Yeah, right.
Will Ferrell. I like Will Ferrell's movies.
Yeah.
He cracks me up.
Have you seen Eurovision?
Melissa McCarthy, I think, is amazing.
Yeah.
I've not seen Eurovision. What is that?
Oh my God. Oh, it's on Netflix and it's his latest movie, and it's
I'll check it out. I can't wait to see it.
It's so good, especially if you know about the Eurovision, like their Star Search thing they do every year. All the European countries submit songs. It is.
I can't wait to see it.
It's hilarious.
Thanks for the tip. There's too many movies and TV shows now. You can't even keep track of them all.
Yeah.
So I'll hear about a new TV series that's been out 3 years and people say, oh, it's a great show. Yeah, I've literally never heard of it. There's just too many.
Hey, everybody, try to get Scott's book. He's got 3 of these things, How to Write Funny, but this one's called How to Write Funniest, the book 3 of your serious step-by-step blueprint for creating incredibly, irresistibly successful, hilarious writing. I put a link there in the show notes. I'll put one in the podcast notes as well.
Thanks for the plug, Pete.
Yeah, listen, The Onion is, man, it's such a gem. And I appreciate you kind of going off script with me and talking about where you're at.
Sure.
Because we need more of these conversations, not less. Because we don't have to agree to get along, and we can all work on the things that we can agree on,
Absolutely. And I like when I see that, when I see like somebody like Matt Gaetz partnering with somebody like AOC. Mm-hmm. That's very encouraging to me because there is common ground on some things.
And, tolerance is a virtue, and it's not easy. It's easy to hate what you don't like and what you don't know, but that doesn't get you anywhere. That just creates intolerance. You can't put intolerance into the machine and expect to get tolerance out. It doesn't work.
Right. Yeah. That does not work at all.
Well, listen, I've taken an hour of your time. I really appreciate it. Thank you so much. Come back and do another one with me?
Yeah, I'd love to. Thanks, Pete.